In the far reaches of the galaxy, on a planet where the skies were constantly shrouded in thick, swirling ice storms, live a race of beings known as the Verelli. They were a species of tall, elegant creatures with translucent skin that shimmered under the harsh cold, their bones made of the same crystalline material that formed the planet's surface. The Verelli were a stoic people, their emotions tightly controlled by their society's rigid expectations. They were warriors, survivors, and guardians of their home world. Their compassion was a concept they barely understood, for the Verelli believed that emotions were weaknesses, things that had no place in the battle for survival. Among the Verelli was Lady Ellera, a high-ranking official in their military forces. Ellera was known for her impeccable strength, her calm demeanor in the face of danger, and her fierce loyalty to her people. She had always followed the Verelli code, believing that emotions were distractions. That was until she became a mother. When Ellera's daughter, Riona, was born, Ellera's world shifted. Riona, with her soft, innocent eyes and a smile that seemed to defy the cold of the planet, became her everything. But Ellera knew that she could not let her feelings for her daughter cloud her sense of duty. She raised Riona in the harshest of conditions, training her to survive on the ice-covered plains, to endure the freezing storms that raged across the planet. The Verelli had no time for weakness, and Ellera would not allow her daughter to grow up soft. The ice storms were legendary on Verelli. They swept through the landscape with little warning, ferocious and deadly. Ellera had survived many of them, as had every other member of her species. But when one particularly vicious storm hit, it would test her more than she could ever have imagined. It began as a quiet evening, with the sky thickening and a chill creeping over the city. Ellera was at her post, overseeing the protection of the city's walls, but something felt different that day. The wind was biting and restless, as if something far worse was approaching. When the first gusts of the storm hit, they tore through the city like a wild beast, throwing debris into the air and whipping the icy cold against every surface. Ellera knew they had little time to prepare, but she also knew that she had to protect Riona. As the storm worsened, Ellera's instincts told her to find her daughter. She rushed home through the freezing streets, fighting against the gale winds, determined to get to Riona before the storm reached its full intensity. She knew the dangers of the ice storms better than anyone, but what she didn't anticipate was the sudden collapse of the city walls. In a matter of moments, an enormous wave of ice swept through the streets, sending buildings crashing down and sending people scattering for their lives. Ellera reached her home just in time to see a massive ice shard pierce the roof of the building. She rushed inside, her heart pounding in her chest, but the sight before her made her freeze. Riona was trapped under a pile of rubble, her small body buried beneath the heavy debris. Ellera's heart clenched as she struggled to reach her daughter, but the storm outside made it impossible to see. It felt like an eternity as she fought to free Riona, knowing that each passing second could be her last. Just as Ellera was about to give up hope, a figure appeared through the swirling snow. He was a human, tall and strong, his face covered by a helmet, but there was no mistaking the strength in his eyes. He was not from Verelli. Ellera recognized him immediately as part of the human exploration team that had arrived only weeks earlier. She had dismissed them as weak and primitive, but now, as she watched him charge toward her, a strange sense of gratitude bloomed within her chest. "Hold on," the human shouted through the wind, his voice firm and steady. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees beside her and began clearing the rubble with terrifying speed and strength. Ellera could only watch in disbelief as he worked tirelessly, his arms moving like a blur, until, finally, Riona was freed from the wreckage. The human didn't hesitate for a moment. He scooped the unconscious Riona into his arms, ignoring the danger of the storm and the freezing cold. His eyes met Ellora's, and for the first time, she saw something in him that she had never seen before: compassion. The human was not simply saving her daughter because it was his duty. He was doing it because he cared. "Take her," the human said, his voice calm, as though he had done this 1,000 times before. "I'll protect you both. We need to get to shelter." Ellora could barely comprehend the emotion stirring inside her as she watched this man, a stranger to her world, offer his life for her daughter's safety. It was something no Verelli had ever done for another, let alone for one of their own. As they fought their way through the storm, the human stayed close, guiding Ellora and Riona toward a hidden cave beneath the city. Despite the freezing winds and the chaos of the storm, the human never once faltered. Days passed, and the storm eventually subsided. Ellora and Riona were safe in the cave, and as the weather cleared, Ellora could see the human clearly for the first time. His name was Daniel, a human from a distant colony, sent as part of a peacekeeping mission between his people and the Verelli. He had seen the destruction of the storm and had made it his duty to ensure the safety of those in need, no matter their species. He had risked everything to save Riona, a child who wasn't even his own. As the days passed in the safety of the cave, Ellora found herself drawn to Daniel, not just for his actions, but for the compassion and warmth he had shown her and her daughter. In the years of her training and upbringing, Ellora had been taught that compassion was a weakness, something that had no place in the Verelli way of life. But here, in this human, she saw the greatest strength a person could possess. He had nothing to gain by saving them, no reward, no power, no recognition. Yet he had done so without a second thought. Ellora struggled with the feelings stirring within her. She had always viewed humans as inferior, as a species that could not possibly stand up to the power of the Verelli. But what she had seen in Daniel's eyes was something far greater than the arrogance of her own people. It was pure, selfless strength, and it challenged everything she had ever believed. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Daniel turned to Ellora, his face softening. "Your daughter is strong, Ellora," he said quietly. "And so are you. You've been through more than anyone should, yet you still fight for her, for your people." Ellora looked into his eyes, unsure of how to respond. For the first time, she felt her resolve weaken, her long-held beliefs starting to crumble. She had always been driven by duty, but now, standing in the presence of this human, she began to question everything. "You saved her," Ellora whispered, her voice barely audible. "You saved us. I don't understand why." Daniel smiled gently. "Because, Ellora, you both deserve to be saved. You both deserve compassion, even if you don't believe it. And I'm not just going to stand by and let someone suffer if I can do something about it." Ellora could feel the tears welling in her eyes. She had spent her entire life building walls, guarding herself from emotions, from weaknesses. But here, in the presence of a human who had nothing to gain and everything to lose, she found something she had never known, a love that was pure and untainted by the corruption of power. As the weeks went by, Ellora's perspective shifted. She began to question her loyalty to the Verelli code and the cruel traditions that had governed her life. She had witnessed the love and strength of the human spirit, something she had never thought possible. Daniel's selflessness had awakened something within her, a desire to change, to make things right. In time, Ellora made a decision that would change the course of her life and the future of her people. She would not return to her military post. Instead, she would fight to protect those she had once seen as weak, including her daughter, and she would stand alongside Daniel, embracing the compassion and strength he had shown her. Ellora and Daniel's bond grew stronger, and they worked together to teach the Verelli the power of compassion, sacrifice, and the strength found in love. It wasn't easy. There were those who resisted change, who clung to the old ways of dominance and power. But Elora had seen the truth, and with Daniel by her side, she would fight to change the course of history. One day, as they stood side by side, looking out at the horizon, Elora turned to Daniel, a soft smile on her face. "I never knew compassion until you showed me," she said, her voice full of gratitude. Daniel reached out and took her hand, his gaze filled with love. "We all need someone to show us the way, Elora. I'm just glad I could be that someone for you."